Well, hey, what's up, raw and real entrepreneurs, wherever you are in the world? I hope you're having an amazing, amazing day. And, any chance I get to talk about football, I am going to talk about it. I know most of you are in countries where football is soccer, and I totally get that as originally from Canada, a Commonwealther. But my guest today is a serial entrepreneur, but we will talk about football. I'll figure out a way. You all know I will always figure out a way. I do have a question for all of you. And the question is this. I mean, we're living in a very uncertain time. And I know that right now, in terms of our top shows, I get the report every single week, US, Canada, UK, New Zealand overtook Australia. I don't know, Australia, what is going on with you? And then Malaysia slipped into the top 5, which is awesome. So hello to all of you. But everywhere in the world right now, there's this crazy uncertainty. And my question for you is, do you truly feel that you control your own destiny? Because you do. You have to understand that if you want to be an entrepreneur. And my guest today definitely believes that.
Welcome to Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that dares to bring the no-nonsense insight to those who have the courage to start, grow, and scale a business. Here is your host, entrepreneur, investor, and best-selling author, Susan Sly.
Check this out. He's a serial entrepreneur, a venture capitalist, and I'm sure not one of the bad ones, one of the good ones, and an author. And he is someone who loves to share his experience to really help people in business and entrepreneurship, which is messy and gritty and rewarding and fun. And at the age of 27, he was featured in Crains 40 Under 40. And in his mid-30s, he had a private equity exit for his insurance company. And he founded his early stage VC firm, Glencrest Global, with a portion of those proceeds. He's been featured in so many publications, New York Post, Chicago Tribune. He's been featured on WGN, ABC, NBC, and Fox. And the most important thing to me is he's a single dad, and I was raised by a single dad. So I love single dads, and my dad listens to the show every single week. So hi, Dad. Thank you for listening to the show. And on top of all of it, he's a former Notre Dame football player, although he did transfer to Northwestern. We will probably talk about that. But John Cerasani, thank you for being on Raw and Real Entrepreneurship. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, and hello to your dad as well.
I want to jump right in with a question I've never asked anyone.
Okay.
What is it about being a single dad that gives you the fuel to be an entrepreneur?
Oh gosh. I think it's kind of goes hand in hand if you really think about it. For me, at least, I guess not really for everybody, but for me, I think it's the same characteristics, the willingness and mentality that I want to do what's right. You know what I mean? And I want to be good at what I do as well. And, it's kind of funny. I'll share a quick story. As my career kind of took off and I left corporate America and started making money in the entrepreneurial world and my own business, I didn't feel fulfilled as I could have been and should have been, as what you would have thought of when you're making 70 grand in corporate America, and then, okay, now I'm making $500,000 or whatever your numbers are. The numbers don't really matter. But when you're here and then you get here, you feel like, oh, I'm going to have all this fulfillment in my life. I'll tell you right now, raising my kids has really filled that gap more than money ever would. And I thought about it even while it was happening. I don't look back and just think about it as it was actually happening. I knew that. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And we had, my friend Blake York, he started a med spa business. He was on the show. He's a single dad, and it's tough, right? Because when you're the only game in town, there were many years ago, I was a single mom. And when you're the only game in town, it's on to on. So it's like, I wake up in the morning and I'm on, and then I'm in business, I'm on. And then when the kids come home from school, I'm on. And it's that being on all the time. And that, let's face it, John, like this responsibility to lead 24/7. So what do you do to step back from leadership to regroup? Like, what's your recharge?
You mean besides some drinks after work? I'm just kidding. That's actually not what
I'm not kidding, but yeah, sure.
You had mentioned football earlier. I get away from things on the weekend, especially in the fall, watching some good college football and the NFL a bit. I'm from Chicago, so I'm a Chicago Bears fan, even though we don't have much to cheer about right now. I still work out quite a bit as well. Going to the gym, and I got to tell you, like a lot of people say that maybe it's cliche. I hurt myself last year with a back injury that kind of laid me out, and I couldn't work out for like 8 months. And I mean, talk about having a gap in your life. I never realized how much I needed that, and it was still kind of during COVID too. So there's really nothing to do. So that is an outlet for me. Oh, and I have 2 dogs too, by the way. So.
And they're very cute. If you're not on YouTube, if you're listening, they're adorable dogs. Yeah. Oh my gosh. We were talking before the show, and I was in Chicago for the National Restaurant Association big show. And I was speaking there. I was speaking, and this show is like 20,000 people. And I was staying at the Marriott Marquis, and I went running, and I got to run by Soldier Field, which is so freaking cool. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is the best. Like, the waterfront is gorgeous, but like I'm running by Soldier Field. So my favorite Bears player, I know some of you, you're like, if you're not following football, you're like, what is she even talking about? But back when I was growing up, being raised by my single dad, some of you are old enough to remember we had rabbit ears, John. So like on top of the television, you have those little antenna that you have to move. So the only station we got was CBS, and I grew up on the Canadian-US border. So on Sundays, my dad and I would watch double headers. So when the Bears were playing, my favorite player was William the Refrigerator Perry. Oh, gosh. And so that he's the one Bears player that I can name, the fridge.
I'm going to tell you what. So anybody in our age bracket or around this age bracket, Susan, that's from Chicago, could name every starter on the 1985 Bears. Okay. And I'll tell you right now, it's pretty darn impressive that you said the Refrigerator Perry, because I think he was only on the Bears for like 3 years. He didn't have like some kind of stellar career. So the fact that you're bringing up that name, you're one of us, Susan. We'll let you in. You're in the club.
Oh, well, thank you. I have to go back to Chicago this summer. When the fridge was playing, so my dad and I, John, on Sundays and I was a competitive nationally ranked track athlete. So on Sundays, it was like running, piano, church, and football. Yep. And so I would go out for my long run in the morning, and then come back. Then we go to church, and then come back, and we watch double headers. And my dad and I would do quarter bets. And I'm like, I would always bet on the Bears. And when the fridge would come on, I'm like, it's over. Like the man would just stand there and be like, I don't care. You're 300 pounds. You're going down against the fridge. Anyway, so I digress. So as a serial entrepreneur, so many of us, we start a business when we're a kid, and there's that first business. What was your first business?
Oh gosh, I'm going to tell you what, I remember doing stuff as like a kindergartner, trying to like sell candy that I would take from my mom's cupboard and try to go sell it for 50 cents or probably a quarter back then. I was always doing things like that. I had a little store set up in my bedroom of like comic books and baseball cards. I'd go buy a pack of football cards that maybe came like 8 in the pack for 25 cents, and then try to sell them each for 10 cents or a nickel, depending who the player was. And I mean, I was just kind of always wired that way. I think the first thing significant though, Susan, would probably be when I was in college. I had, like you had mentioned, I had transferred to Northwestern University, which for those that don't know, is right outside of Chicago. We were pretty darn good at football when I transferred. A lot of people ask me, why did you transfer from Notre Dame to Northwestern? Well, I tell them, well, a better education. How about that? No, I'm just kidding. They were pretty darn good at football.
A bunch of people just canceled subscribing to this show. And a bunch of people are subscribers now.
Well, exactly. And well, anyone that's on, I have my Notre Dame mug out of coffee I'm drinking right now. And I actually have allegiance to both of the schools. Both of them have done great things for me. But anyway, so one of the things I did when I transferred to Northwestern was there wasn't like the same social circles that you might see at other universities, especially other ones in the Big Ten, like, the Michigan States or the Ohio States of the world. Shocking, right? That Northwestern didn't have a big social scene, right? Oh yeah. So I put together this company that would hold events at various downtown Chicago nightclubs and kind of cater to the college crowd, which really otherwise these nightclubs didn't even want us in there. So I was dating a girl from DePaul at the time, so I had her and all DePaul universities in the city. It's like a Catholic school downtown, and and then I had a friend at Loyola University, another friend at University of Chicago, put this big group together and really formalized an actual company that got recognition. And actually that's one of the reasons I was in that Crains 40 under 40 article years later. It was substantial. I mean, as I look back, I think I passed the statute of limitations on this. We weren't supposed to be making money while we were in college playing football back then. Now you're allowed to. Not only are you allowed to, it's encouraged, it seems like. Yeah, so that was probably my first real entrepreneurial journey, I think, other than lemonade stands.
Yeah, it's so interesting when I'm approaching like 300 episodes, and to hear people's first entrepreneurial venture, and it tends to be something as a kid. It's like there's a problem, I want to solve it, and whether it's a personal problem that I want to make some more money and I have to figure out a way, or whatever it is. It's just like it just seems so natural. What do you say? Because in the VC world,
yep,
you often hear invest in the team, invest in the team, invest in the team. And I want to ask, it's no different than sports, right? We bet on the team. But I want to ask you, taking a step back from that, do you think it's possible for someone to learn how to become an entrepreneur, or do you think it's something that they're born with?
I think it can be learned. And I think, the broad definition of entrepreneur, definitely in some contexts, it could be learned, right? So like, if you're a career long architect or engineer at a firm for the last 20 years and you have a bunch of contacts and something happens with your boss and you decide to go on business on your own, maybe you're not even wired for this, but you can go start up your own company and probably do well for yourself because you've learned the business and it just makes sense to do. But the people with actual grit, that don't have that kind of, I guess you would say, like that bridge in that example that I just gave to get into it. No, everyone's not wired for it whatsoever. And especially with this early stage venture capital, this early stage VC stuff that I do, it becomes quite clear, quite obvious. You got guys like I got a guy in Atlanta that I'm invested in right now. It's called Moneyline is his app. It's a sports gambling app, and hopefully he's going to get bought by FanDuel or something in a couple of years. And I'm going to tell you what, he barely raised any money. I gave him some. And then now all of a sudden, 2 years later, Comcast Sports Ventures is giving him money. What? Look at how much he has done with a little. That's impressive. Now I'm in some other deals that are well funded that we barely have a website up yet. It's like, what are you guys doing? You know what I mean? And I like to think that maybe there's a method to that madness that hey, I'm just the investor. I'm seeing where this is going to go. And I do have some confidence in those, but I've been involved in a couple that it's like, you got so much, man. You're doing very little with a lot. And I want a lot with a little. And, I think it truly is, Susan, the way people are wired.
I love that you brought in the investment piece and let's talk about what makes a company investable, because I heard a story yesterday, John, where this company had raised, it was in the med tech space, and they had raised $150 million and the company went bust. $150 million, and they still couldn't get it done. And so one person's purview was, it's because med tech is so hard. And I'm like, $150 million and you still couldn't get an MVP beyond a pilot stage to some form of production, even if it was limited production in one hospital, you couldn't get that done, right?
And they didn't have an MVP?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. No. And so you see investors like, you see investors who are willing to throw millions and millions and millions of dollars at, a concept, but not necessarily look at the founder's ability to hustle and sell. And so even with Radius, where we're at, so we had raised, it's on Crunchbase, so I can disclose it, right? About $7.1 million. We're already in the market, we're in production, and we've gone in 12 months from 8 people to 86 people. And we haven't even done our A round yet. So we're not even diluted that much. Mm-hmm. And that's because we've been able to do, and in AI, that is not a lot of money to get to the point where we're, production working with enterprise customers. But to your point, can that founder do a lot with a little? And that's a great question. Yeah. So let me ask you this, like if you had a checklist, and you probably do, of what makes a company investable, especially an early stage company, what are those things?
Yeah, and for your listeners too, when I'm speaking of early stage, I'm talking about, in this context at least, I'm speaking of very early stage. There's no money coming in yet. There's no one second, this got off. There's no money coming in yet. There's really no clients. It's really just an idea and sort of a platform, and they're developing the minimum viable product. I'll look at the entrepreneur himself or herself and just see, do they have that grit? Do they have the ability to fight through some adversity? I'll ask them questions that are tough. You know what I mean? And if they put their nose up early to those questions, gosh, that's such a telltale. You know what I mean? There's a very big difference between people being humble, which I love. You're a likable person if you're humble, okay? But not to be confused with passive, okay? When you are passive, how could I count on you to be aggressive and go get clients? Okay. It's one thing if you're able to get this funding from me, but you need to actually be able to turn around and go do something with that funding. Okay. So that's really the biggest thing I look at. And there's really no formula. It's a series of conversations and really just that gut instinct I get from a person. Now, beyond that, when I'm just talking about the company itself, then it's a little bit different, because then I got to look, okay, what's the concept? Okay. What is the reason, we think this is either going to disrupt the industry or exist in the existing industry, or exist to compete in the existing industry. And from that standpoint, sometimes these founders don't know what they don't know. And maybe none of us know what we don't know about something if it's new. Like if you would have told me in 1998 that I was going to be paying all my utility bills online and not sitting down for 2 hours and writing checks out, I never would have believed you. You know what I mean? So, now technology has caught up so much. We're all starting to kind of look at life a little bit differently. We're like, okay, this metaverse, okay, this virtual reality. Okay, well, now we could actually see it happening because we're so like almost desensitized to the fact how quick technology is moving. But some ideas, though, saying all that, Susan, some ideas are just stupid. Like seriously, you get a lot of people right now, especially young tech types of entrepreneurs, that, oh gosh, they want to do something with social media, or they're going to take over Twitter, or they're going to do, monetize hashtags because Instagram hasn't figured it out properly. It's like, okay, and how much are you guys raising? Oh, okay, you're doing your $500,000. Okay, you're gonna take over Instagram with a $500,000 raise. I got you. Okay, you know what I mean. So I think the combination of all of these things really just kind of gives me an instinct on whether to do it or not. The other thing that I'll look at is this a person that could somehow add to my current network? Is there an expansion of my network that's valuable by working with this person, right? So like Susan, if, I'm just using it as an example here, but if say we didn't know each other and I never knew about your podcast or anything, and we crossed paths and you were raising money down the road for your company, okay, is Susan someone I want to be associated with? Wow, look at her background. Look at her. Oh, she's got this successful podcast. Okay. Now I'm getting, I'm putting credibility to that. So a little bit of all that.
I think that I love that broad perspective, John. I had Nick Cavuto on the show, and he is also an investor, an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about trends. And so he's investing his allocation for investment this year are like salt of the earth style businesses that really target people who are aging because we have a rapidly aging population. I think
Yeah.
in technology for my incubator, FemBoss, what I look for the applicants that come through, do you have one problem? Can you solve that problem with based on your experience? Right. So what is, I'll give you an example. So one of the companies that's coming through our incubator, the two co-founders in another venture, they have made millions and millions of dollars. These women know how to hustle. I've known them for over 10 years. They aren't techie, but they have one problem that they want to solve. And it's very simple tech to build. And you can stack it, you can add AI to it, you can do all sorts of things to it. But can we get that MVP out the door in 90 days, beta test? How long is it going to take us to get 1,000 testers? And those are the things that I look for in a company. But it comes down to the founders. I have seen ideas that are okay, but founders that know how to hustle. So let's have this conversation. So I'm kind of obsessed with the We Crashed story. And so there's Adam Newman, and I had this conversation with Nick because Adam Newman in Silicon Valley just got $70 million. If you're not familiar with who that is, he was the co-founder of WeWork and the big documentary on Netflix. And, he's doing all these drugs and stuff. And the C team comes in and kind of ousts him, much like a Steve Jobs kind of move. And yet there are people who are willing to throw money at people like Adam Newman, who had a success, but a personal failure, because they know that he's going to be able to get it to a certain point, even if they take it over after. And I want to ask you about your opinion about that. Do you think if the founder is gritty and hungry, even if their idea is mediocre, can they do it?
Yeah. And you know what? Yes, I do 100,000% actually. So I'm in one right now, actually. It's called Lightning Fit, and they're going to take over. I probably shouldn't get into too many details about it, but there's some technology associated with it that could really revolutionize physical therapy and sports medicine. I'll just kind of leave it at that. Okay. But they also have, a proof of concept with it being popular in the fitness world and it working there, and they have multiple locations set up with that. Now, okay, the big thing over here is let's be $1 billion company one day. Let's get an insurance code. Let's change the world. Okay. Mm-hmm. Over here, though, we can just keep setting up these locations. There's one in Brentwood. There's one in LA. They're popping up. We have an app. People can work on. Okay. There's no way this thing goes to zero, because even if this doesn't work, which by the way, it will, and I'm very impressed with the founder, and hopefully she's listening and she understands why, that I believe in her and I'm one of the early investors because of this. But even if that doesn't work over there, you still have this. They will make something out of this no matter what we do. It's almost impossible. It's not almost, it is impossible to go to zero, because we already have a proof of concept down there. Now, the one thing with that, Susan, as you probably know, is, okay, what valuation are you coming in at? Okay. You know what I mean? I'm early stage enough now, so I still have that hedge down here. But if you come in a little bit later and it's a $500 million valuation, okay, workout centers in the strip malls are probably not going to be enough to ever hedge that $500 million valuation, right? Again, I'm early enough where I have that, but that's the exciting thing, because with this company particularly, because you don't have that in a lot of them. It's either going to work or it's not. You know what I mean? And this just has so much diversity in the different avenues that could go. Not just the concept, me having confidence in the founder, Colleen McNutt, that she's going to be able to find something to do with this regardless. She's convinced it's going to be $1 billion company. And hey, I'm not arguing with her, so we'll just go with that.
We'll have to have Colleen on the show, because I would love to interview her. So how many companies are you invested in right now?
I'm in about, so Glencrest Global is set up as, I just was not comfortable calling it the John Cerasani family office. So I call it Glencrest Global. It's my capital. We don't have limited partners. My big money is managed by the professionals and and various hedge funds and private equity things, and then I have a portion of my net worth that I manage myself through Glencrest Global, going to these early stage pieces, and I'm in, I think, 28 different ones at the moment. Now, about 24 early stage, and then I'm also in just some 4 other random things that like the Newport Beach Marriott. I'm part of an investment group that bought that hotel, and now it's the Via. If you're ever in Newport Beach, go to the Via. It's amazing. But yeah, so
it's actually funny you say that, because I was just at that hotel last year.
Were you really?
Yeah,
Well, that was after we bought it, but they probably hadn't started the remodeling yet. If you go back now, you will never recognize it. It's awesome. So,
and this episode today was brought to you by
the Via Newport Beach, part of the Marriott family.
Yeah, there you go. So 28 companies, and so when you're investing with an early stage startup, are you a hands-off investor, or do you get in there? And because there are different types of VCs, and some want to get in there, John, and they want to change things up, and they want to install a different CEO. How do you approach that aspect of it? Because I know there are some people listening who are like John and I, and they do invest in early stage companies. I have not 28, a couple of them, but then there are some of you who are thinking about investing in like a WeFunder kind of company or whatever, or you're investing in your retirement portfolio or whatever. I personally think there are some things that remain the same in terms of what to look at when investing in companies, whether you're spending $40 on United stock or you're investing $736 in Tesla right now, or whatever it is. But I want to ask you, for you and your investments, what kind of relationship do you have with all of the founders?
Yeah. So a lot of times now I'm trying to have some kind of advisory type of position. One that I have a pretty big stake in, and we're at the Series B level now. It's a government tech company. I'm actually on the board because I'm involved well into the 7 figures on that account. It's called Quicket Solutions, another amazing company. But other than them, my checks are usually on the early stage stuff, more in the 6 figures. And I try to go after or work with companies that I could actually bring something to the table. And it might not be specific to my background or my industry, but is there something complementary that I could give them? Okay, these guys are a great tech product and they're going to apply it to, I'm just making stuff up, but they're going to apply it to the sports world. Okay. These guys are kind of like techie geek guys over here that don't have any contacts in the professional sports world. Okay, I do. Maybe I could give some advisement on how to do that. So, okay, here, I'll throw in, X amount of dollars and also put me as an advisor on your advisory board. And we're going to get together once a quarter or once a month, whatever makes sense. And I could guide you through the process or even make some introductions. To me, that's where it's fun. Because in early stage venture capital, you're going to get the crap diluted out of you over time. And, even if I put a $500,000 check into something that has a $10 million early stage pre-seed valuation, look at me, everyone's kind of, throwing me a party and, treating me like God. And they should be, by the way. But in a couple, if I'm talking about that kind of money and that kind of valuation, but in a couple rounds, guess what? No one's going to remember me. I'm not going to matter. If it goes the way we want, some fund is going to come in with a $10 million check on an $80 million valuation. That $500,000 I put on my 10 million. Hey, that's awesome. But you know what? And I'm making money on this from an investment standpoint, but I'm just not relevant. I'm just not significant anymore. So I want to be significant, and I'm not going to be able to keep up with these funds that, especially when we're talking about, 8-9-figure check, not 9-figure, but 8-figure checks. It's going to be very few and far between for me, because again, this is just my money. So what do we do about this? If I'm an advisor and actually bringing more to the table than just money, you got my attention.
So what I'm hearing, and I love, and in my world, so we talk to people like John to invest in the company, right? And that's why I said he's one of the good guys, because he wouldn't be on the show I only have people on the show, John, that I would have the dinner table with my children.
Awesome.
So I'm very focused in terms of that. But what I'm hearing is it's not just about the money. It's also about how do I add value, and early stage investing is so risky, and that, that risk tolerance. And that's, why I have so much respect for you, because you're able to discern you're able to look at risk and say, what kind of risk tolerance do I have? How do I mitigate this risk? And if I'm an advisor to the company, that's going to help to de-risk my investment. Now, speaking of, so you're getting the workout in, you're a single dad, 28 companies, plus a portfolio, plus, plus,
Right.
and you're writing a new book.
Oh,
So yeah, like the last question I have, like, tell me about this new book in all your spare time that you're writing.
So my background is that I came up in corporate America, and unlike other entrepreneurs, I didn't just, come up with this earth-shattering, groundbreaking idea. You know what I mean? So I never raised money. I never did any of that stuff. I just came up in corporate America working at a publicly traded insurance company. And I was actually at a company called Arthur J. Gallagher, which anyone that's in the corporate insurance space should be familiar with. And I just decided, you know what? It's like the Wizard of Oz, and that's a great company, and they're all great. But it's like, when it comes to actually serving the client, when it comes to the deliverables given to the client, is there anything happening here at this billion-dollar organization that I can't be doing on my own? So I left this job in my late 20s. And I just left corporate America behind me. And I had that big title. I was an area vice president. I had an office. I had an assistant. I mean, it was all the stuff that you'd want. And a lot of people that do what I do on their own go after littler clients. I thought, you know what? Forget that, Susan. I'm going to go after the same types of clients. And I'm going to compete in that space because I've pulled back the curtain. I understand what it takes, and there's nothing I can't do here. Now, corporate America might brainwash us with our business cards and everything else, and our job titles and everything else, to convince us and convince the clients that this is what they need. But you know what? I know otherwise. So my book it's called the 2000% Raise, and it's about leaving your job in corporate America, going to business on your own, and doing the exact same job. Okay. Not changing a darn thing. And, I'm not oversimplifying it. It is really that simple. And this book really guides you through the process. It includes my past. It's not a memoir by any stretch of the imagination. It's using my experiences as a guide, and also what I've witnessed with others. And here, the way it worked out for me is I was making 140 grand, left that job in corporate America, started my own company, ended up selling it 10 years later to a private equity backed competitor, took a bunch of stock in that private equity firm. That tripled twice in a 5-year period because it recapitalized twice. Holy cow. All of a sudden I'm 42 years old and never have to work again the rest of my life. Never in a million years. Well, maybe in a million, like literally maybe in a million, that would have happened in corporate America. So that's the topic.
The 2000% raise. And we'll have to get the foreword by Lou Holtz for that book.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah, we can make that happen. Well, John, it has been a pleasure. And everyone listening, whatever platform you're on, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, wherever you are, John and I would love a great review. I actually read all of your reviews. And so please give us a great review. Tag John on IG. That's his hangout. So it's John Cerasani on Instagram. It's actually his real name, which is cool. And tag me, Susan Sly, on Instagram as well. But anyway, John, thank you so much for being here. You're absolutely amazing. I love what you're doing in the world. And I hope everyone here, just send us a note if this episode has helped you, because I've definitely taken a page of notes as we've been talking. So John, thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, entrepreneurs. Well, you go out there, rock your day. God bless. And I will see you in the next episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship.